administration, which has several functions, including the city clerk's office, human resources, finance, technology, and the city manager's office. The mission of the city manager's office is to assist the city council in developing policies that are responsive to the needs of the community, providing effective administration for town affairs, overall management and leadership of the town, and I like this, preserving the character of the scenic, rural, thickly wooded residential area with abundant open space and streets designated primarily as scenic routes rather than for speed of travel.
That's straight out of the general plan.
There are several core services of the city manager's office, as you know. I'll just highlight a couple of them. Chief Public Information Officer, representing the town and the council at meetings with other governmental agencies, providing leadership for the organization, enhancing public engagement with Atherton residents, and overall enforcement of the town codes. The current staffing in administration is city manager, deputy city clerk, and office specialist. We'll be recommending that the deputy city clerk position be changed to city clerk, continuing with 3 full-time employees. The goals, so there are some separate goals for the city clerk's office that are HR related, but here this is mainly through the city manager's office, providing a balanced budget for council consideration, determining the permanent employees for the positions of finance director, police chief, and public works director, improving communications, interaction, and flow of information between staff, committees, and commissions, improve the town's information technology, which is highlighted throughout all the different departments, replace or upgrade of the town's phone system, enhance public engagement, complete labor negotiations, and establish a strategy for the parcel tax renewal, which was not on your original form and is missing from that hard copy. So if you wouldn't mind jotting that down, establish strategy for parcel tax renewal. There might be a few differences in the presentation that you received last night, just because we had a meeting this morning and tweaked a few little things.
Okay.
If you'd like me to go over city clerk first, you can cover both of those at the same time.
No, I think
Let's do it one at a time.
Okay.
Okay. Little minutes.
Perfect.
comments? Yeah, I've got comments here. The hiring of permanent staff, we really haven't, I don't think, looked at the compensation side of the equation to really come up with all the answers on that yet.
We're actually in the middle of that right now. Kaufman Associates just completed it.
That needs to happen before I think we make any offers.
Yeah, we'll have a compensation study completed within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, good. One of the things I would like the city manager really to be always doing is looking for best practices. And that encompasses the whole gamut of departments and working with department heads and things like that, people like that. But I think that ought to be kind of our mantra, okay, what are the best practices? And continually try to improve any area that will improve upon quality and, efficiency, timeliness, and those kinds of things. And that brings up the idea of which Mike has instituted performance measurement and feedback mechanism from town residents. And so that the city manager really has in some areas they call it a dashboard of matrices to look at on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis to see how they're doing in different areas. And they have comparisons that make between peers and a broader universe, but be able to see the trends over time, and that goes along with best practices, I think, and really having an information means to stay on top of these kinds of things. We've talked about it in the past. I've been promised by prior city managers that, oh yeah, we'll do this and that, but I haven't really seen anything come out of that yet. I think that the city managers needs meetings to help focus on this 5-year financial plan and make sure that new actuarial assumptions on health benefits, there's thinking through on pensions as to what we ought to anticipate, a lower discount rate someday being in below the 7.5 we have now, what impact that might have on our financial plan, and so we get ahead of these things in terms of at least planning for them. And so I'd like to and to me that also implies the kind of city manager we're looking for. When we talked about somebody that had financial savvy, and I think this is an example of what's needed in that area. You mentioned information technology. Can you expand on that a little bit as to what staff's thinking along those lines?
Updating our website, allowing you as council members to go to the website and find what you need. I have several requests for contracts, ordinances, even minutes. They're hard to find. Agenda packet items.
Well, again, this might be an area of best practices, looking at what other websites, other cities and so forth, and really trying to not invent it ourselves, but trying to get what's out there that would be a good 90% of the need that we have here, type of thing. Enhancing public engagement through technology and innovation.
It's kind of the same thing.
Okay.
Just touched on.
You weren't thinking about televising meetings and things like that? And
That would be one of them too. And streaming it out.
so you're going to have to, you and the mayor, I guess, and whoever, kind of think through how to frame that whole area so the council can get into it, see its teeth into it, and see, setting priorities again, because there's so much money you could spend in that area.
Well, one of the things, Jerry, if I could interject, Teresa and I had an opportunity to at least pick the brain of what Redwood City has done so far. Because as you point out, we could learn from what they're doing. There's also the dark fiber here, and there's money from Palo Alto or from Comcast.
Dark fiber,
The dark fiber, there's fiber that runs right underneath our town, and we can tap into it, and there's a pool of money that's associated with it for us to do some technology, such as televising, or use that perhaps for better communication systems that might go into the proposed new telephone system. So some of those things there's been some discussions, and Teresa has got the people from Redwood City coming back with some proposals for council to consider. But that would open up the meetings for more transparency. The recording system that Teresa is going to bring before council, she highlighted in the budget, will allow for digital recording, so we could parse that, and that could be out on the web and then be available for people if they wanted to hear what was actually said on the web, as opposed to coming and asking for a transmittal or a tape, buying a tape. It'd be available for download.
Well, you're thinking about this kind of thing.
Right, yeah.
The other a couple of things. One is to make sure that there is good staff linkage with the committees and commissions we talked about before. Make sure that happens and that is continued and not allowed to, not be part of the city manager's job responsibilities. And also, if the city manager is going to represent us on the South Bay Waste Management, that the city manager attend those meetings. We've had city managers in the past who were representative and didn't attend those meetings, and we suffered the consequences. That's all I have.
Yeah, I would add to some of Jerry's comments here. Complete labor negotiations implements of stable salaries and benefits for employee contracts. I kind of know what you mean there, but I would reword that. I would say complete labor negotiations and implement affordable salaries and benefits for employees' contracts. Because, I don't know what sustainable means, but we have to have affordable salaries and benefits, things that we can afford. And then my next item is the last one. And that, to some extent, follows with my previous comments. I don't think we should think that the parcel tax is an automatic thing that we're gonna have every 4 years. I mean, if we can come up with other revenue sources, I would like to get rid of the parcel tax. And so I think that, you know, we don't want to sort of have the parcel tax as being something that our staff thinks is automatic. I mean, what we need is revenue.
So what you would do then, Jim, is rather than establish a strategy for parcel taxes, establish a strategy for revenue enhancement.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was just gonna say that, Jim. Took the words right out.
Sorry. Didn't mean to.
Well, I think that you have to have the parcel tax in there, it's either the parcel tax elimination, replacement, and, or with revenue enhancement.
Oh, but if it's revenue enhancements, the parcel tax is one option.
Is that it, Jim?
That's it.
Elizabeth?
Okay, so, you know, I think that all of those comments are excellent and add to the list of department goals. I think that one other item should be city manager's position to make sure that environmental awareness to the community is part and parcel of our city's goals to help us reduce carbon emissions and bring down our overall town's dependency, or usage, I should say, usage of so much electricity. And to keep current with the new technologies that would reduce costs through new technology like paperless systems or other kinds of communication devices for the town at large. I still believe that we are lacking in our communication to our residents as far as giving us a push information system. It's really more of a, the way it is now, that if a resident is interested, he can go on, or she can go on the website and figure out, oh, what meeting is being held today. And then, you know, like, my husband this morning says, so, I said, well, I've got this council meeting this afternoon. He says, well, what's that all about? You know, as a general purpose citizen, he says, well, it's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. How can any public come and meet at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? I've got to go to work, and I didn't know about it. I know at one time there was a system that we had some push information. It was even just a little email notification of meetings that were going to be held. And it was very helpful for people who wanted to attend the finance committee or a budget study session, and then they could plan on it. So I think that we don't do a good job of really communicating with our residents. And I'd like to see some plan and thought put on it.
My comments are two. One is, I've been speaking with the people over at Menlo Park with some of the activities they did. And of course, they had their Measure L and established different benefit plans for the non-safety officers that work in the city. And of course, their new city manager was actually hired underneath these new second tier. So I think a push has got to be on, let's move forward where we can with an approved budget plan, an approved benefits plan, where we're allowed to implement or where we can implement. That's got to be a high priority, especially with the hiring of new people. And secondly, in accordance with some of the comments on technology and Elizabeth's comment, one of the goals I think for the city and the technology that's available today is allowing the residents to dial in, listen by phone, and provide their input, on a small time scale or time requirement basis. And we really need to open up our meetings to allow for conference call capabilities where people could dial in, they get the floor for 3 minutes to make their comments. They know a topic is going to be discussed in a certain time frame, and maybe they can't come to the city hall or where we're having the meeting, but they can dial in at 2 o'clock or 2:30, because they know that's about when they're gonna hear about a topic, make their comment, hang up, and they can be done. Because, and it should be the same for committee meetings too, because people don't have 3 and 4 hours to come and sit and participate in a meeting, and they have, many people are working, or they've got childcare issues, or they're sick, or they can't come in, whatever, but they do want to have a say, and I think that if we could open up, use the technology that's commonly available, it's cheap, it's free, for the most part. All we have to do is just bring in, for example, a Polycom system, which is a couple $100, and set up an operator dial-in number. So I think that there's some, as everybody has said, there's some best practices that are used in private industry today that we can open up our meetings, make them, increase our transparency to the public, and I think get a full benefit and get more input.
And one more comment. I would like to again repeat disaster preparedness, because the city manager played a key role in that, and I think the implementation, getting that program implemented and tested and so forth ought to be something that's really high on the list.
Sure.
Again, the committee and commission volunteer handbook, I think this should be part of the goals of the city manager and administration department to create, so that we equip our community volunteers with the rules and regs and procedures for financial dealings, or Brown Act, rules and regs, so that they have a full understanding about what's being expected of them when they sign on to be a volunteer on the committee. And I want to go back to your organizational structure. I love that you put public works, public safety, and under community services, building departments, that that's the whole catch-all there, right? Building services, public works, planning, everything. I think this is very clean, simple, it's really good. I love it. Nice job.
Done?
I'm done.
Got it.
Well,
Any comments from the public? Peter?
Yeah, speaking to the issue that a number of you talked about in terms of public notice and public participation, et cetera, one of the things I encourage you to think about is, I think that all too often local entities take the notice requirements for meetings, the legal notice requirements as being the minimum, and they adhere to them to the minute. 3 days before a regular meeting, 1 day before a special meeting. My guess is that you probably knew that this meeting was going to occur some time ago. And there's nothing in the law, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, which precludes you from sending out an agenda quite early, and then even up until 3 days before the meeting, amending it with additional information. And it's particularly important for someone like the Almanac, if they have enough time to know that a meeting is going to be held and can get it into the newspaper, it's much more likely they can do that if they get 6 or 7 days notice rather than if they get a notice on Friday afternoon. So, yes, you have to meet the legal minimum, but the legal minimum doesn't mean that you can't do it sooner.
Okay, good point. Thank you. Okay, Deborah, thank you.
Okay. Now let's shift to administration, but the areas of the city clerk, which is also responsible for human resources. The city clerk's office is to be the steward of the democratic process, facilitating the business proceedings of the city council, conducting elections, administering campaign and financial disclosure laws. And as I mentioned, they provide the human resources and risk management services for the town. Some of the core services here include, of course, record archiving, elections officer, the areas of recruitment and administering benefits, complying with the procedures and updating the risk management program in accordance with our JPA, which is ABAD for insurance coverage. We talked about mandated services. There are several that the city clerk is responsible for, including Political Reform Act, the Brown Act, the Public Records Act. I'm not sure what the MADI Act is.
That's something you have to send out every January, a list of your vacancies on your committees and commissions.
That's So, the goals that we've put forth for the area of city clerk and human resources include updating the town's records retention and destruction, and implementing a comprehensive records management system, maintaining and updating the resolution governing committees and commissions, as we spoke about, assisting in the review and revising the municipal code as necessary, potentially implementing an automated agenda packet, finalizing the employee policies and procedures manual, updating risk management policies, administering a successful election in November, and improving the transparency through improved technology.
How do you measure successful election?
Depends if you win or lose. And it wouldn't necessarily have to be in November. You said, I think you added that just
I
for
forgot
that.
that.
You did.
I thought that's for the next election.
It could be,
There could be one.
yeah, there could be a special one. In any month, yeah.
Does a town website fall under the city clerk's?
Yeah,
I mean, is that
posting of items,
is that one of the goals of city clerk is
yes,
to make sure that all that
yes,
is taken through?
In the absence of an IT person.
yeah. IT who comes on site once a week.
And I had a question about HR. I think there needs to be kind of a plan or at least an understanding or something that we on the council have as to how HR is going to be conducted. I would think it would be going to outside specialists in some cases and so forth. I just think we ought to understand, what the ground rules or guiding principles are going to be for the city clerk in that area of personnel administration or HR.
And make sure that no duplication between town HR, and I know, there's some HR mandated requirements in the police department. So we need to have one HR organization. But I think we have a contract, where we put money in the budget for HR support.
We do, we use Coffin Associates for certain, some things.
And you've had some conversations with the fire department that said, let's wait.
Yes.
But again, I think best practices from, your city clerk association will be
Yes, and I rely on the Human Resource Association too.
where you come back, or city clerk would come back and say, okay, I suggest that we look in these areas, because I think there are things that I don't understand city clerks do at other places that maybe other people can't.
Any other comments? Jerry?
No.
Jim?
So I have a question. Who's responsible for council rules of procedures?
According to something it's either in the city code or municipal court or in something that was done before, it basically says that the city attorney is the parliamentarian, and which essentially is the rules that you follow, but beyond that, the city council makes its own rules, and some of which are out there. I can't remember which resolution.
She's referring to currently, council executives.
I just, the only reason it came up is there's an article in today's paper about the city of Oakland, and their city administrator is really holding the council's feet to the fire to obey the city's rules of procedures about, that they shouldn't give orders to any administrative employees, that the way they have to approach the city manager with issues having to do with the town and not do any kind of direction to staff and tell them what to do and what not to do.
We have the same provisions.
Yeah. We do, yeah. So I just want to make sure that that's updated and that who enforces it.
Anything else?
I'm done.
Public? Okay.
Good
Thank you.
job on this.
The finance department is to ensure financial stability, provide timely and accurate financial information, administer and safeguard the city's assets. Some of the core services include providing financial services to all of the departments within the city, completing the annual audit, any financial reporting, treasury management of the investment portfolio, operation of the budget, also making sure all the mandated services have been complied with, including the state controller's report, different general law types of reporting, and payroll tax reporting. The current staffing includes the finance director. In the budget, it calls for a financial services manager and accountant. We're proposing a slight change that we would continue with the finance director and accountant, but provide for a financial technician, so still having 3 employees. The finance department goals is to develop a balanced budget, update the 5-year general fund financial forecast, get a better understanding of revenue sources and the proper collection of revenues, implement the purchasing policy and procedures, update the master fee schedule and cost allocation plan, research sustainable or affordable salary and benefit options for employees and contractors, determine if paying off the PERS side fund will benefit the town financially, complete pre-funding of the OPEB retirement benefits via an irrevocable trust, implementing sound risk management, and I think very importantly, which I'm not sure if this was brought to you before, but upgrade the citywide financial software system.
Any questions from the council? Okay.
So the Springbrook Financial Services software, I thought we just implemented that a year or 2 ago, and so we have to upgrade it. I mean, are we not getting regular updates? You know,
I believe 3 years ago it was put into place.
Uh-huh.
I think it's a very good system, but it does require updates. Right now, we are on the oldest version that they're really in the process of not wanting to support anymore. So there are some things that we have to call if there's any problems. We have to call and they have to do some manual tweaking. And so that can't go on forever. We will need to upgrade the system. And so we're looking into what type of proposal. I said you better make me a good deal.
yeah,
But
that's surprising to me because, usually when you buy, a software package, they send you regular updates and you can, kind of pay as you go and you're constantly
Right.
updated and, current on everything.
Plus, we're paying the maintenance, and so the maintenance
Yeah.
normally, like on Oracle systems, the maintenance gives you the updates. And they can't sunset something unless that they give us ample notice, and I think in the contract, and in their normal terms and conditions, they would have sunset requirements, which generally are 8 years.
I
So
will
if you
look
bought
at
something
the-
3 years ago, they can't sunset it.
I will definitely look at the
Yeah.
contract. I haven't done that yet, but with speaking with the Springbrook representatives, they have mentioned that they would like to migrate us to the newer version. So I'm not sure if we're.
That's some fee.
Of course, I would, I'd like to migrate everybody to current property tax values in Prop 13, but I can't do that either.
We certainly
Be
understand,
careful.
we understand the concept. I will tell you that I've looked at this over the years, and the license agreements that we usually get with our municipal software packages, because the law changes every year, they refuse to be locked into lengthy periods of time, and they say, look, this is what you get, and we will be updating. Whenever they get to a certain percentage of the system that they feel is now it's getting hard to maintain everything as an update, they just turn to you and say, it's a little bit like the Apple Macintosh where they say, okay, no longer can you use this version, you have to switch to this version, and if you don't, all the new programs won't be supported. So you're kind of on your own.
Well, we
And,
should check the contract.
Yeah,
We should just check the
I think we
contract.
should, yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
some of them may be okay and some of them.
Especially since we're paying the maintenance fee all the time. I can understand if we weren't paying the maintenance, that's understandable,
Right.
because a lot of people say, hey, look, you're not doing the maintenance, we're not gonna support you under this new release. And part of the maintenance fee includes going to the next level.
So maybe we just didn't
But we
do
should
such a
just-
good job in the beginning of the contract.
But we should find that out.
So my other
Obviously.
quick question is, in the staffing, to change financial services manager to accountant, and accountant to finance technician. Are those going to be at the same salary levels, or will they be different salary levels? What's the difference?
I don't believe the city has ever filled the financial services manager. It's kind of a little bit like a assistant finance director position, which, within my brief time here, I believe that it would be better for the city to have a strong technician, a director, a strong accountant, and a strong technician, rather than another layer of management. So it would definitely be a lower salary range than the financial services manager.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, I think the finance department is very, very important part of the town. I mean, that may not be used to anybody, but I think that one of the things I'm not feeling here is that in this description, we don't see the fact that realistically, the finance department is responsible for approving all spending. And I know that the mayor and I have had this discussion for some time. You know, when we see the warrants at the end of, when we see the warrants, which basically is the spending for the town that we get for every council meeting, I mean, there's nothing much we can do about it because all that money has already been spent. So somewhere here, and I've pushed this for a long time, the director of finance or somebody in the finance department should be approving all invoices before they go out. And you know, if there's an exception required, then we can take care of it. But in the past, when I've talked to many of the city managers about the warrants, and I've said, well, what was this check for? And the answer was, well, I don't know, I'm going to have to ask somebody. Well, you know, my rule has always been, in business, I never sign a check unless I know what it's for. And therefore, I would feel a lot more comfortable somewhere in here, we could bring that up, that the finance department really should approve, should be at least a co-signer of all spending.
That will be in the new purchasing policy.
Okay.
So as long as we have that structured right, the purchasing policy defines that the financial director is involved in the purchasing and also signs off on that.
Yeah, well,
She would just-
the purchasing.
But yeah, I agree with you, Jim. But I think
I would like to propose that the finance department present to the council some improvements to the policies and procedures of the department, which would also allow for efficiencies. And as you've spoken about bringing best practices forward. And so best practices may not be the same person signing on. I mean, in general, the governmental practices that department directors do are responsible for their budgets, and therefore they sign off on invoices. And that may be a policy that Atherton does not want to keep. And so it's something we can bring forth, but I'd like to frame that in the way that we would bring to you the best practices of policies. The purchasing policy is not going to address the signing off of all invoices, but it does address certain purchasing things, and we'll be discussing that in April, so we can get into that.
I would think that the finance director of the finance department would only have to double check whether or not the department head in approving this expenditure, it's in line with the budget that has been approved. And otherwise, you're giving the finance director, you know.
Let's let her bring forth her.
Yeah.
I would just point out that the budget is not authorization to spend. Because people look at budget and they look at the expense part of the budget, they rarely ever look at the revenue part of the budget. So having it in the budget, and I've already talked to several people here about certain things that were spent. Well, I spent it because it was in my budget. The budget's not an authorization to spend. The budget is a long-term view of what we think might happen. Most of the time it doesn't. And therefore, we've got to get away from the fact that you know, the budget is an authorization to spend. I'll welcome your views on this.
Okay. I think I mentioned already about the 5-year financial forecast. I would like to see a financial plan that would include the revenue enhancement aspects to it. And look at the actuarial, healthcare changes, and look at PERS. I think you need to also have in here the interface with the committees in terms of making sure their budgets and internal controls and all those kinds of things are in place, including special funds. We have one really big special fund and we've got some, really very small ones, and I think that certainly needs to be as much attention to the special funds as to the general fund in terms of controls and that sort of thing.
Okay. Is that it, Jerry?
Yeah.
All right, I've got a couple. Back on chart 19, which is the finance department overview. I'd like to say where you say to administer the city's assets, I'd like to say, and thanks to Jim's efforts last year, and keep track of and administer the city's assets, because we need to have a asset management system capability, we need to do asset tagging and tracking. So then on the next chart, which is 20, at the end I would add inventory management / asset tagging. Doesn't mean you have to tag all of them, but we should have tags that we hand out when we buy things to keep track of those assets. And then there needs to be some sort of asset scrapping policy, which we need to get done. Finally, on the department goals and in line with, I guess, best practices, I'd like to add implement an IRR methodology, an internal rate of return. So when we buy things, we make progress, like let's say we decide, hey, it's going to be trendy to do paperless. So I'd like to go paperless. We need to have the internal rate of return. We need to evaluate whether or not this is actually going to be pay off what we're going to go do. If we're going to buy new motorcycles because the old ones don't work or because the maintenance costs are too high, we want to make sure that over a period of time we make a projection of what it would cost to keep the old ones and that we're going to have to get some sort of payback by making this investment. So that's best practice that's used in business, and it certainly should apply to what we're doing here. So I would add that implement an IRR and internal rate of return methodology to our acquisitions.